have always had a special place for the original Xbox. I remember attending a Microsoft pre-launch event for the console in New York City and waited in line for hours just to get a brief glimpse of what the future could hold for gaming. Now, fast forward more than 20 years later, and just the promise of being able to play Xbox games on a handheld device is something that my teenage self probably wouldn't believe. Many of my viewers and people that I have talked to in the community kept mentioning to me how well Xbox emulation ran on the Win600. And so I put some other projects to the side, and I will admit that my curiosity, as it always does, got the best of me. Naturally, I started to research and compile a list of exclusives, games that I personally loved, and games that would be interesting to see running if possible. So join me, Rob, the Retro Tech Dad, as I take a look at XEMU running in Batocera on the Win600. Like my PS2 video, I will start out and give you a list of games that did not work well for me. Now, I will always encourage my viewers to test games out that you are interested in. Maybe you can get the games running, or didn't experience the same issues, and if that's the case, please let me know down in the comments. I will make a quick note and say that most of the games I'm trying to feature here are an Xbox exclusive and remain stuck on the platform to this day. I also did not test games that were not listed as playable on the XEMU website, so games like Otogi and its sequels are not going to be featured here. All of the games were tested at native Xbox resolution. So first, the games that you see here are games that ran but had frame rate that was too inconsistent for me to recommend. This is a small list comprising of Quantum Redshift, Rally Sport Challenge 2, and Bloodwake. I will quickly mention that Bloodwake actually ran too fast, which was an interesting issue. Now, these games all had frame rate that I would consider to be too slow to be acceptable. These are all games that do run though. I will say that I was pretty bummed about Panzer Dragoon Orta. These games all crashed or locked up on me at various points, and I was also able to recreate it multiple times. For whatever reason, Gun Valkyrie runs great, but anytime I click on the left analog stick, the game just closes, and I don't have it mapped as a hotkey. I might go back to this one and try the PAL version for that one. It's a really strange issue. So with that out of the way, let's start getting into some playable games. So first up is a launch game from Team Ninja, and was kind of a big deal at the time for Microsoft since they had locked this one up as an exclusive for the platform. It definitely was a big selling point for the Xbox brand alongside other key titles at launch. Now for this game, the overlay says that it's running at 60 frames per second, but it just felt kinda slow to me. I'm not sure if I'm just forgetting how this one plays, but I thought it was worth mentioning here. Another game from Team Ninja and Tecmo comes Ninja Gaiden, which again was a big deal for the Xbox brand. This is a fantastic game, and black is the definitive version to play. This one runs pretty well with the occasional dips in frame rate.
Useful techniques is the flying bird flip. Jump towards a wall and run up it.
Now, I love the Amped series, and I am really bummed out that we haven't had a new entry in the franchise since the early Xbox 360 days. I think Microsoft is sleeping on this one, and it's a damn shame. Anyways, I was very surprised at how well this one ran, and it's really such a fun game to play. Building on the extreme sports genre and technically another exclusive entry on the Xbox, which also launched alongside the console. Of course, most know that this is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, but the Xbox did receive an enhanced version, known as 2X, and it was the definitive version for many. This one runs very well with XEMU, and I didn't encounter many issues with it. I will say I much prefer playing on the Win600 than back in the day on the big old Duke controller. This was a very interesting exclusive to the Xbox, which was based on the popular TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Kind of like in my PS2 video featuring Futurama, this one plays very much like an episode of the TV show and features the characters that we all know and love. This is a surprisingly competent game based on a licensed property and remains a full-blown Xbox exclusive. It's worth giving a shot if you haven't tried it out yet.
Excellent shooting, Buffy. I do believe your aim has improved.
That's me. Death from above.
You have no idea how glad I was to find out that this game was playable and ran decently with XEMU on the Win600. This is another franchise that Microsoft seems to have buried for whatever reason, and yet again, it's a huge shame. This is one of the top tier Xbox exclusives and remains one to this day.
Try your secondary weapon. Practice on those abandoned gun towers. Good job.
So this one was a really random one. I think most were surprised when Sega announced they were planning a sequel to the popular Genesis title Jam Earl. This one was developed with Visual Concepts, who are responsible for the NBA 2K games today. I'd say they did a good job staying true to the original Genesis games with a more modern take. By the way, Jam Earl has actually made a return recently without Sega's involvement, and it's actually a pretty cool game, so check that one out. I saw someone had Jet Set Radio Future running on the Win600, and that pretty much solidified my decision to make a video on the Xbox and emulation. I didn't realize how far XEMU had developed, and really kudos goes out to the developer. Support them, thank them, and be patient with them. Anyways, I adore Jet Set Radio, and the sequel Jet Set Radio Future improves on it in every way. I don't understand how this franchise has been ignored by Sega for so long. It's absolutely bonkers to me. So Jet Set Radio Future is a full-blown Xbox exclusive and remains one to this day, never receiving a port of any kind. This is why emulation is so important, because it allows others to enjoy games that otherwise would be lost to time. Go play this one, it runs quite well on the Win600. I have to say I was not expecting much from this one, because Grabbed by the Ghoulies was bugged, and honestly I think Conker is one of the best looking games on the Xbox. However, I am pretty pleased to report that this one does surprisingly well on XEMU. It has occasional frame dips, but for the most part, it is pretty playable and looks really great. On one hand, I like the original N64 version because it's not censored, but I really love the way this Xbox version looks. It's another series that Microsoft seems to have no interest in bringing back. At least it's backwards compatible on the Xbox One and Series consoles. There is no doubt that Sega gave a ton of support to the original Xbox, and Spikeout Battle Street was a 3D beat-em-up made popular in the arcades and brought over to the original Xbox. It is a full-blown exclusive and hasn't been seen anywhere else. In fact, the series pretty much has been non-existent since that time. I'm not the biggest fan of this one, even though I do love beat-em-ups. It just feels incredibly generic to me. However, this is another one that runs quite well, only occasionally having some frame dips, but I will comment that the FMVs are a little bit buggy. At the time, Microsoft was really trying to build out a substantial library with the original Xbox and threw a lot of resources at this. Just Add Monsters is responsible for Kung Fu Chaos, a silly and fun game revolving around making a kung fu film. This is a pretty interesting title and runs very smooth in XEMU. The developer Just Add Monsters would later rebrand into the beloved Ninja Theory, eventually becoming part of Xbox Studios today. Apparently, right before they had rebranded into Ninja Theory, they were actually working on a sequel to Kung Fu Chaos that eventually turned into Heavenly Sword, which I thought was kind of interesting. Oh man, here's Konami back at it again. There was a time when they experimented and made original games, and this one was a sequel to the first entry on Dreamcast. This one is a full-blown Xbox exclusive, and honestly probably forgotten by most at this point. This was always kind of the crappier version of Ace Combat, but it's still an interesting game to check out for history's sake, and does run pretty well here. And finally, you can't talk about Xbox and not mention Halo. Now I know this one is definitely not stuck on original Xbox, receiving a PC and Mac port, and recently being part of the Halo Master Chief Collection. But I had to test out one of the most iconic games for the Xbox, and this one runs very well. I am honestly blown away that this is even happening on the Win600. And with that, we come to an end. I have to say I really enjoyed making this video. I am a huge fan of the original Xbox and still love the massively sized console to this day. It was a very exciting time for gaming, and things like Xbox Live, high-speed networking, and a built-in hard drive, which are norms today, started way back on this console. Were you just as surprised by the performance of XEMU? Let me know down in the comments, and I'd love to give one more shout out to the developers of XEMU and thank them for their amazing progress. This is the Retro Tech Dad, and thank you so much for watching.